It is Thursday, today, June 29th. Welcome to Axiom News Live. We are here to draw attention to whose work we've become connected to and care about. Today, we're joined by Yeti Adjison, who is with Building Up in Toronto. Building Up is a nonprofit construction contractor that delivers high quality work for its customers while providing long term career pathways for motivated community members. We're also joined today by Wendy McCaig of Embrace Communities. Wendy has been described by a mutual friend of ours as a badass community developer who hails from I knew I was going to bugger it up, Wendy. It's Appomattox, Virginia. And Wendy has been exploring how the practice of generative journalism might enhance, inform, and integrate with that lifelong work of hers. So welcome to both of you, Yeti and Wendy. It's good to have you with us.
Good to be here.
All right. I thought I might just start with asking each of you perhaps why you said yes to joining us on our new and live show this week. Today we'll play with the format a little bit. We'll spend a little bit of time in a small group here with the three of us, and then as the show unfolds, we'll first spend 15 minutes with Yeti and her work and what's alive for her and what she'd like to see unfold. And then we'll switch subjects and move along to hearing from Wendy. Wendy's exploring generative journalism and the intersection of that form of narrative work with a long-held practice in asset-based community development. And then at the conclusion of those two focused segments, we'll bring everyone back and spend a little bit of time just checking in on what the experiences are like and what we've noticed about each other. So that's, I think, how we'll go about it. Wendy, can you say a little bit about why you said yes to joining us?
Yeah, I think the one word that comes to mind is resonance. It's one of your favorite words.
Right on. Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
being in circles with others who are exploring how community building and developing of an identity, of a we-ness, of a group, and the role that story and storytelling and capturing of story, how important that is in that process of formation of any community has become a passion of mine. And so when I first entered your circles, kind of as a just kind of watching a little fly on the wall, it just every single time there's this just deep resonance with something that I have wanted to explore for a really long time with other like-minded people. So that was the main reason I said yes. I'm like, oh,
Right
they're
on.
doing something new. That sounds fun. I want to be a part of something new. So that's why I'm here.
Right on. Cool. Thank you. And how about you, Yeti? What conjured your yes?
Well, I think Wendy said made a lot of really great points, but pretty much the same. I wanted to be associated and around people that were like-minded, that were community invested and invested in just building up communities and working together and just sort of networking and being a part of that. And so I also wanted to bring some note to the company that I work for that's doing really amazing work for the communities here in Toronto. And so I thought this would be a great platform to do that. And
Right on.
yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
All right. Thank you. And I said at the opening that we're here to lift up the work of people who we've become connected to, and we met 15 minutes ago,
Mhm.
but I guess we have a mutual relationship with Sean Loney.
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes, yes. All right. Okay. Thank you. We'll bring Wendy back if you don't mind, Yvonne. We're not quite ready to jump into our single segments. I do want to talk a little bit about again our format so that future guests as well as folks who are listening in can have a sense for what we're about. Um, our intention really is to we're not trying to make talking heads out of anyone, or politicians or presenters. We're looking for the stories on the ground of real people and how it feels to be in real relationship around those works and what's unfolding. So I wanted to say something a little bit about being present rather than sort of presenting. We also want to make the space a comfortable one for folks who are um, likely as busy or busier doing the work than sorting out how to refine a message or to present what they're up to. So I just want to hold space for that. And I also want to say that we also value patience and even silence. We're a little less interested in what has happened in the past or how we got here, and a little more interested in about what's alive and what's unfolding. And we're not often asked those questions. So sometimes it takes time and quiet to find the question, say, as an interviewer. And as a guest, it's quite all right to be in quietude while searching one's inner landscape for whatever is arising as a response. So I just wanted to open that up. So if there are pregnant pauses, our guidance is to both our guests and listeners to not become alarmed and simply sit with it and wait for that important thing that's likely to be shared or explored out loud. How does that sound to each of you?
That sounds
Oh,
great.
great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any doubts and reservations about what we're about to do that you'd like to name before we begin? All right. Good. Well, with that, Wendy, why don't we relegate you for now into the green room, and I'll spend a little bit of time exploring with Getty her work in the world, and then we'll bring you back in 15 and explore what you're up to.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay. So welcome again, Yeti. As I said before, we came into relationship or are coming into relationship, I guess, through an introduction by Sean Loney from Encompass Co-op, and you're with Build Up in Toronto, which I have heard a great deal about. It sounds like Building Up is a force of nature in give
Absolutely.
me a little bit of a sense for what it's like being there and the sorts of works you're up to.
Well, building up is a super fast paced environment. So there's always something popping up, there's always something new. There's always innovation happening, new ideas being brought to the surface. Um, and yeah, so it's a fun place to work. It's an interesting place to work. And the work that we're doing is community based, and so it's rewarding
Right on.
in many ways. Yeah.
And what makes it in your work and world? What makes it an enterprise community based? What are some of the elements that
For me,
qualify?
what would qualify enterprise community based would be the idea that we often the people that we the participants and the people that go through our program are normally people in the community that have barriers to employment or and in that we actually a good example is that we work a lot with Toronto Community Housing.
Okay.
We do a lot of the repairs and the servicing of Toronto Community Housing residences. We also employ many of Toronto Community Housing people that people who live in the residence
I
to
see. Okay. Okay.
actually repair their own properties.
Right on. Okay.
It's super cool. That's something that I thought was really innovative around the way building up works in many ways. So it's like we train, we assist, we help people develop that are actually going through living in some of the places that need the developing and need the support. And so it's kind of like a win-win situation for both parties.
Right on. Okay. And for you, what are the things that are in your day that when you wake up in the morning, it's the thing that gets you going?
Probably my the participants that I work with, the people that
Okay.
supporting. Yeah, that gets me up literally every morning. Sometimes I'll be getting calls as early as 6:30 in the morning that something's gone on or they need help. Somebody needs assistance to get to work. Sometimes to get support to get to where they need to be, transport support, things like that. Something could have happened on the way to work, or they need assistance with finding the location of where their job sites are, things like that. So from very early in the morning to into the evening, there's consistent calls coming in, and um, things that we have to support with.
And do you find yourself often working with the same group of people, or are you moving around all the time, meeting new people? How does the weaving of your relationships feel?
I feel like we work with many different kinds of people.
Okay,
With new immigrants to Canada, we work with people coming out of the justice system. We work with uh, just a variety of people. But the idea and the concept behind what we do is that they should have barriers to employment, where things are a little probably I generally tend to work with a demographic that's a bit more having a difficult go in life.
right, right.
Yeah.
And what are some of the favorite things you like to experience in the work?
um I would say just the idea of seeing somebody go from being in our program to moving on, and going into training or getting into a union, and like forging an actual career path. So a lot of them come in, they've had jobs, they've done the gamut, they've maybe worked in factories or done labor or these kinds of things, and then to come out of a 4-month program and be equipped to have a career and to like be supported with that, just to see the confidence that gives the people that we support, and and when they make it through, like from one step to the next step to the next step, those to me are the rewarding aspects of this work, like just to see not only a job being created, but also a career path, something that will sustain them, something that will give them stability, will give them confidence in the long run.
Right on.
Mhm.
And what are the how do you feel this affects community? I think we can imagine how it might affect each individual. It sounds like you're building pathways to vocation, and um, what have you seen in terms of how, as people move into those, would you call them
I
more
think it,
whole careers, more life giving careers? How does that ripple, or how does that play out in community settings?
one of the amazing things, one of the amazing ways that it plays out in the community setting would be that um, it encourages other members of the community to follow suit. So
Okay.
you may have a community of people that maybe don't feel that they have opportunities open to them, or they're scared to push forward and try for certain things, based on their knowledge, or based on the education, or based on what they've been able to absorb from their surroundings. And so when somebody or two or three people within any given within their surroundings have gone through a program and have been successful and can bring that back to their community, that's a huge
Mm,
uh, kind of a step up for the community, because that means that more will follow. um,
right.
so yeah, to me, that's part of what community building is about, you know supporting, and then that support naturally grows, right? It becomes exponentially, so much larger. So that's the idea.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, how long have you been at building up and involved in this work, or even adjacent works? Like, did you just land here from somewhere else, or were you? Has this been a
I've
gentle path in one direction all the way along, or how has it been?
I mean, I've been at building up for 5 years now.
Okay, so that's a
So
long
quite
stretch.
a
Yeah,
stretch,
yeah,
yeah, quite a
yeah.
stretch. And it's so amazing, because I started there, and there was I would say maybe 20 to 25 people working for the company, maybe less even. And I've just watched it grow so much over the last 5 years. So that shows the impact that we're actually having in the community, and in what we do. Just the way the company has grown, and the amount of support that we've been able to gather from community members, and partners and so on. So it's been wonderful to see that. Um, the other piece I would say, yeah, 5 years. I know. What were you?
So you
Sorry.
said it started with sort of 25 folks, and was that? So again, I don't know Building Up how close to the found. When was Building Up founded and
I
begun?
believe. Wow, I should know the answer to this. I
It's
believe
all
it
right
was.
if you don't. Like that stuff in the past, we don't have to worry too much about it.
That
But
is.
you've been there for 5 years, and you said
Uh,
when you came there was about
I would say
25.
I would say 8 years, 7 to 8 years.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you arrived um, with the enterprise, you said about 25. I'm loath to ask about numbers, but what sorts of numbers are you looking at now in terms of the people that are engaged?
I think probably about 50 or 60.
Beautiful. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So I was going to ask what some of the changes you've borne witness to are. Like, if you're described the change over the 5 year period, how would you describe it in terms of how it feels, um, sensibility?
Um, changes. I think that sorry, describes changes in how building up is running,
Or even
or
just change you've borne witness to over the last 5 years as you've walked with Building Up.
I just the amount of I guess the amount of participants that have come through our program that
Right.
has changed. So, like I said, as people start to hear more about the company and what we actually do, um, we're growing our demographic and growing the amount of people and the different types of people that are coming through the program. So that's been something that I've noted that's been a major difference. Um, the size of the company again growing, which allows us to do the work I think more efficiently and better. Uh,
Mm,
that's a big thing that I think has been really great for the company. We now have different departments that and certain people take care of certain things, and it was when I started it was still a very much in the growing phases of the company, and now I think there's more of an established, this is what we do, these are the sections, and this is what different people, different departments are going to be focusing on. uh,
right.
and that's really helped to just make our impact that much greater.
Right on. So in the on the website, you're just the Building Up describes itself as a nonprofit contractor.
Yes.
Now that probably makes a whole lot of sense to folks that are engaged with Building Up, but I would imagine to a lot of people the idea of a nonprofit contractor is also a pretty radical idea.
Right. Right.
Do you run into that, or are you swimming in the water so that it's just natural, or do you bump into people that wonder about what it is to be a nonprofit contractor?
um I think, my understanding is that we are a social enterprise. We are half
Right on.
for profit, half not for profit.
Right.
So kind of how we work. So we do have a sector, a contracting sector of building up that makes money, um, and then we have a sector that is mostly based on community support and going out and doing the work that we do, and we get funding to be able to provide that work.
All right.
Um,
So you got
that's
some
my understanding.
lasagna,
I hope I'm not wrong in saying that.
right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like as far as the not-for-profit part, I wouldn't say I know enough about that aspect of the company.
Right. So there's some
Sort of.
blended of social value and
So, yes,
market
that's
presence.
my
Yeah.
understanding.
Yeah. Super
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Okay. When we look forward a little bit into how things have been unfolding, what seems to be emerging and is on the horizon that is attracting your attention or seems exciting to you?
I think just the idea that we are now going into a phase at building up where we're able to support people for a longer period of time.
Okay.
So when we started, we were supporting people. We had a 4 month it's a 4 month sort of program. They would spend 2 months in the program learning and um, sort of doing some hands-on work, and then they would go on to our building up sites and actually work and get the experience. And then from there, they move on to a union or a trade union of their choice, and we pay for their union dues, and we assist with all aspects of what they need to move forward.
Right on.
And now we're able to do that to the point where they become a red seal or a journey person. So that is like on a 4-year trajectory with the
Wow.
in construction trades, and so their union dues, anything that they may need, tools, just trainings, things that would pertain to what they need to move forward in their career path, we're able to support long term, as opposed to just for a short period of time and then move them on off.
All right. So what kind of preparatory work are you having to do to lay the stage for that?
We've created what we call an alumni team, I guess. So it's another
Okay.
sort of department within Building Up now. So as I said, we've grown a lot. So we now have sort of specialized departments that are able to deal with specific things. And so our alumni department is growing as we speak. And so that deals with participants that have graduated our program, that have moved on to union. And they're mostly dealing with people who are moving on to at different steps within their career path. So,
Wow. Okay.
if they're 16 weeks in and there's another sort of hurdle to pass, alumni would assist them moving forward.
Wow. All right. So they're returning and supporting others in a similar journey then.
They don't are they we do have a they're not really returning to Building Up per se, because they've moved on from Building Up and
Right. Right. Understood.
they're on
Right.
their career path, but they are they return for supports from Building Up. So
Right.
we are
Right.
a blanket sort of around them, so that as they go through their journey, the barriers that they may face or that they may continue to face, we're able to soften that for them throughout their
Right
journey.
on.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things I like to ask is around if you have if anything comes up for you in response to this question, it's around what might you or Building Up like, want, or need from your community to make your next steps as wonderfully successful as they might be. Is there an ask that comes up?
An ask. Wow. I think, I mean, the ask would probably be funding to be able to continue to help us support our the participants and the community members that come through our program.
Right.
I think any sort of social enterprise or any not for profit, the main thing that is usually needed is funding.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's, I mean, coming. I don't like to talk money personally. That's not
No,
what.
it's part of the picture. So, right.
I don't know if that's my place to speak to, but yeah, I do feel that uh, you know, having funding allows for us to do better work. It allows for the work to be distributed, or sort of equity and distribution to be done well. And I believe that we're able to support more people when we have the funds to do so, or support people in a more impactful way.
And who are the sorts of funding partners that you're engaging with or are looking for? Is it sort of individuals through donations? Are there certain organizations that whose mandates also align with yours?
I would say probably or other organizations that whose mandates align with ours. I'm sure there are some individual donations that come in as well.
Right.
There's government funding that can be applied for as well, grant writing, things like that. So we have some of those things in place. And people who assist with in the company with writing grants and just trying to keep the sort of engine running.
Right on.
I'm
Yep.
not the best person to ask about, more so the financial piece of that sort of thing of how we run the company per se, but
Sure.
yeah, that's I would imagine that those are sources that we pull from.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Well, it's on your mind, so that's good to hear it.
It is on my mind. I mean, it has. Yeah, well, I know for what I do as a case manager, it's I do give out a lot of financial supports. That's something that we engage in quite a
Right.
bit, building up. Whether that's to help people out with immigration lawyers, to help people out with transportation to and from work, like again their union dues, clothing. We supply emergency food supply, emergency rent often, because we're dealing with a demographic of people that don't necessarily have a lot. Uh,
Right.
have a lot of options. So in that way, I think we really fun. When I think of what I do, I think of funding, because that
Right.
would really make it a lot easier to assist people.
And you're experiencing that on the use of the funding on a very personal, day to day, on the ground level.
That's one of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
wonderful things that I can say about building up. I have been there for 5 years. In the 5 years I've been there, and I always tell people the same thing, that there's not probably not one thing I've gone to management about to say I need this for this person that they haven't found a way to make happen,
Right on.
which is
Okay.
amazing. So I feel that we really go out of our way to make sure people feel supported, feel confident in advocating for the supports that they need, giving them sort of a voice and a place to a soft place to land. So that's been probably one of the most graceful things about building up that I can say.
Mm,
Funding goes directly to our participants and to the people who need it, for sure.
right on.
Yeah,
That's beautiful. Something we'd like to see more of, I'm sure.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
For me, that's been a driving force of me being with the company as long as I have. It's wonderful to see the amount of care that goes into what we do every day.
Beautiful. Okay. So maybe one last question, unless I get carried away, would be something along the lines of either what you'd like to see happen next, or what the best thing that could happen might be.
The best thing that could happen is that there's a couple of things we'd love. It'd be amazing to get a larger building for building up, a larger place for us to. Um,
Okay. Yeah. I'm glad I asked.
that would be super amazing. We have an amazing trade center currently, and it's a great space. And we also work out of the Learning Enrichment Foundation here in Toronto. But we are going to be losing that space soon. So likely need another place to kind of have an office space or a place for some of our other departments to be. So yeah, that would be something I would hope for. So like funding.
Right. And there might be an ask in there. Maybe someone's got a lead somewhere for the right kind of
Yeah,
space.
just for an
Yeah.
amazing space or that sort of thing. And yeah, I think building up is doing a great job of um, continuing to support our people, and so and we're grateful for any kind of support that we get from the community.
Right on.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you. All right. I think that will probably round us out for now. Hey, um, have you any reflections about what meaning was made, if any, for you during our short conversation?
I'm just touched that these kinds of conversations are happening. That you're asking the right questions, and that I think it's important for us to you know always be talking about community and building and making space for that. You see a lot of different podcasts and a lot of different things about a lot of different things, but I think this is more. It's been nice to be part of something that's more grassroots in the way that we're we're sort of talking about these topics. And also, I really appreciate the idea of having the space to think and to respond. I think just the way that the interview has been conducted. So I appreciate it, and I'm thankful to be here.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm very grateful that you are here, and hopefully we can see you again. So, we'll thank you very much. We'll um, just move to hearing a little bit from Wendy now, and then if you're willing to stay around, we'll have a bit of a closing circle together to round the show out at the top of the hour. Sound all
Absolutely.
right?
Sounds great.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you very much, Yeti. All right. Well, how's that feel? That feels pretty
That
nice.
was, yeah, it was wonderful to hear more about building up and meet Eddie. That was great.
Yes. Yep. Yep. All right. So, one of the things in generative journalism is to be aware of the possibility that the story you think you're getting together to discuss is not necessarily the one that's most alive. So, before we wade in too far, Wendy, maybe I can say that we have. When did we meet? Maybe was it the beginning of this year? Hasn't been that long ago.
Right before the
Um,
summit, I believe.
right. We might have run into each other at a asset-based community development institute gathering of some sort at one point. But you were attracted to the idea of generative journalism, and then you joined a group of us that were exploring the principles and the tenets and the practice of it. And now you're bringing it into your world. Is that the story you still want to sit with, or is there something else that's come up for you?
No, I think that'd be a good story to pursue.
All right.
Uh,
Okay.
spending a lot of time thinking about that.
This is true. I know this is true. All right. Um, so maybe we'll start there. What is it that attracts you to these notions of generative journalism, or even how do you understand generative journalism when we use that phrase? Perhaps what does it mean to you, and why is that important to you?
I think I guess the aha moment for me when we were going through the generative journalism training was this idea of leaning into what is trying to emerge
Mm,
instead of kind of a more traditional, here's what we've done in the past and look at this, isn't it great? But really asking what is the universe leading us toward? And there was a moment in the training when you were walking us through how to craft that topic of inquiry. And you said, I can't remember how you exactly said it, but something around, what is it that you would care to learn more about or to explore more deeply, and starting with your own questioning. Because I think a lot of times when I'm thinking about how to craft a story, I'm trying to imagine what someone else wants to read about
right,
instead
right,
of really what do I want to learn about. And
right.
from an ABCD perspective, that just felt so um, resonant with what my training is as an ABCD practitioner. So it was a lot of fun to kind of really think about that as someone who is pursuing what is emerging, to ask yourself that, and to sit with
Mm,
others, ask them that, and then start to see this convergence of what is stirring in your own heart and soul, and you start to hear that in the what others are saying, and how that in and of itself is generative. It gives energy to the inquiry, and that's what started happening during the training, the generative journalism training. And I'm fortunate; I'm the third of three ABCDers to go through your generative journalism. So I had buddies to
just rolls off
go
the
back
tongue
to
too,
and
doesn't
go,
it? Sort of.
so I think if I had been the first ABCDer going, how does this fit? But and obviously you've got lots of background in ABCD, and it shows through in the way that you've shaped generative journalism for this.
Well, and that's actually part of our story. We were um, Yeti used the word grassroots to describe the kind of conversation we're having today. And for me, the journey, well, not started, but early on was a small newspaper and community called the Grassroots Review. And our intention very much was um, to ask the questions of the assumption was that communities had everything they needed to fulfill their aspirations. We just needed someone to ask the questions and share the stories that arose from those. And it started to work. And by work, I mean things started to shift. Having been recognized and appreciated and lifted up in a media that cared, um, things began to sort of take shape and unfold. And it was one of our crew members that ended up in a asset-based community development experience with John McKnight and brought some of these ideas back to us, and we go, that's why this is working. So asset-based community development then aided us in our understanding of some of the ways to go about using stories as a generative community building practice.
Well, within, the ABCD framework, you've got your six assets, and the sixth asset is story and culture. But just from my own perspective, I don't know that those of us who practice ABCD lean into that story and culture asset as much as we think about the gifts of individuals, the gifts of institutions, the gifts of associations, economy and built environment, all of that. The story and culture I think, what's surprised me as I've done this work for almost 30 years now is the power that story has to shape how a community defines itself and who it is in the world. And until you can give it voice, until you can name the story that is trying to emerge, it's often communities can get stuck in the inherited narrative or the label
Right.
that society has said, well, this is a dangerous neighborhood. And our Hillside Court community is a public housing complex in Richmond, and the street name was Killside. It was known as a very dangerous community. And when the community started to redefine itself, one of the community members stood up in the middle of a community luncheon, and she said, Hillside's got pride. It was just this naming of a new narrative, a new
Right.
way
Right.
of talking about community. And that was really, I guess, a pivotal moment in that journey where I could see the narrative shift and realize that the narrative mattered.
Right.
How we talk
Right.
about our communities matters. And the whole room just, you could feel it. It's, yeah, it's one of my favorite things to
Well,
watch in
maybe
a
that's that
community.
word resonance showing up again. Maybe is that what you were feeling when you felt it shift in the room?
Yes,
Something
it
like it?
really was. I think, did I like it?
Oh, something like it is. I don't want to
I was, I
say
was like, oh,
resonance
yeah,
was the
I
thing
liked
if it wasn't.
it. Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely. But I think it also, in the theory of ABCD, we talk about, people will start to experience more peace and joy. You talk about these things in abstract in the theory, but when you hear it and it you feel it, it makes it so much more alive
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
meaningful. I think it's a hard concept, a community's narrative. It's kind of hard to name, but I've worked now. So I started out working with individuals experiencing homelessness. So I resonated with Yeti and all she was talking about in terms of the
Right.
journey of the individual, and spent years working in public housing complexes. And now I coach and train ABCDers mainly across the United States. So I've seen this play out over and over again in different communities when they can start to name the narrative they're in, but also resist it and start to name the emerging narrative. And that's been a really you talked about patterns, that it
Mm-hmm,
takes
mm-hmm.
time for that narrative, that new narrative to become visible. And I think generative journalism, I'm hoping it's kind of like an accelerant. We can
Right.
put on
Right.
that process to invite people to push beyond what's immediately in front of you in the moment, and lean into what's trying to happen, because we can get just so stuck in what has been or where we are in the moment and can't see where we're going.
Well, and you spoke earlier about one of the um, attractive ideas in the discussion about generative journalism was beginning with something that interests you, and so I can imagine, well, I can't imagine, I have a fairly strong notion about what it is to be guessing at what somebody else might want to read. And that's the first problem. The second problem is you don't even know what you want to read. So these are ships passing in the night. The chances of what wants to emerging from those two beginning points are very, very slim. Whereas if you can identify what it is you're interested in learning, those are the tendrils of the emerging future reaching to pull you forward. And to declare that and name that attracts other people who would like the same thing together. And that's a much more powerful place to start, I think. So you're having a go at this. How's that? How's that been?
It's really so I'm applying this in several different contexts. So I started out. John McKnight had invited a group. It invited a group to write about ABCD and institutions. It turned out I was the only one in the group. So I want to
A group of one.
say a group of one.
You'll
So
be famous before you know it.
well, and I don't like I have written have published my own book and then working on a second book, and I've done that largely alone. I was so excited about the idea of a team that I was determined to build one. So we now have a nice team of about 6 or 7 ABCDers looking at that intersection between institutions and community, and what is trying to be come alive in that gap space between these two different structures. And so that was the immediate place I went when we talked about how to use generative journalism, because that's a project that's very much happening in the moment. But I started to wonder, I think someone had mentioned the word local newsroom and in one of your circles. I was like, oh wow, what a cool idea. And one of my clients is a youth development organization in Appomattox, and I started wondering, what would it look like if these 16-year-old girls become kind of a local newsroom. And so they've split into 2 teams, and one group of them is listening to their peers, and the executive director of that organization is Tori Patterson, and she and I have kind of gone on the road and been listening to teenagers for the last several months. And I've been doing youth-based leadership development stuff for decades. And repeatedly, what we hear when we ask young people, if you could do anything to strengthen your school or community, what would you do? They don't say it exactly like this, but the heart of it is, give us a place. Just give us a place where we belong. Give us a little bit of power. Can you see us? Can you at least acknowledge that we might have something to offer? And we keep hearing that. The other group of 3 young people, I got them in a room and I took out your instructions on how to design a topic of inquiry. And I was very honest with them. I'm like, okay, guys, I'm gonna be totally honest. I've never done this before, but do y'all want to do this with me? And they were so sweet. They're like, sure. And so we walked through the process and we crafted a topic of inquiry at the intersection of school and culture. And one of the things that young people repeatedly have said is they feel like the school culture, and that this is not unique to where I am, nothing negative to say about Prince Edward High School, but they consistently, whether I was in Chesterfield County or my client in Texas, they feel like the school culture does not celebrate the fullness of who they are. They want to see that culture shift, but they feel completely incapable of affecting change in their school system.
Right.
And
Right.
so that topic of inquiry is at that intersection. And it was a 16-year-old young woman, Barbara Rose Johns, who instigated a walkout in their little small high school in the 1950s, and was ultimately one of the cases in the Brown versus Board of Education case that led to school integration. So they are walking in some mighty footsteps. And so before we wrote our topic of inquiry, we went to the museum that celebrates her life. And I said, you're 6 16-year-olds. Just imagine if Barbara could do this as 1 16, there's 6 of you. You can do great things. And it just was a beautiful way to start that topic of inquiry, is leaning into the narrative, the rich, beautiful narrative of a 16-year-old that changed the world, and challenging ourselves to keep the story going. We're not
And
done.
what's your sense for how the young women you're working with will engage with the topic of inquiry? Will they be contemplating their responses to the questions that are being shaped, or will they be taking them out and
So
asking them?
so they'll be asking. So we
Okay.
crafted it together, and then I gave them. I said, "Okay, here it is. Y'all give me comments." And Kadir was the first one to respond, and she's like, "At first, I read it, and you used the word change agent. I thought I wasn't real comfortable with being called a change agent." And then she said, "But then I thought about it, and I just thought that's a really good word." Like I can see that's what we're trying to do is affect change. And so far that they're comfortable with the language. And so their assignment this week is to name 12 potential assets. 12 people anywhere. They said, can we, so I think some of them are scouring the internet looking for innovators that they want to talk to, and some of them are asking their parents or asking their grandparents,
Wow.
who are the people who would have something important for me as I go on this journey. And so their calling question is basically, what if we all came together to support young leaders in shaping our schools to be what they would like them to be? And so we're just journeying right now. I think 2 out of the 3 have their 12 names, and I'm waiting on the third, and then we're going to start sending the topic of inquiry out and seeing what we get back.
Amazing. I can't wait to, well, hopefully we get to read those sometime or see. Well,
Yeah,
we'll
me
have you
too.
back, or maybe some of them to hear what the experience was like. Wow. Okay. So maybe I will just ask you, Wendy. We're right up at the last few seconds of our time, but maybe for you, what do you believe this makes possible that might not have been possible before? Or another version of the question is, what's the best thing that could happen?
I think what this makes possible, the process of generative journalism, I think it is a, I hate the word efficient because that doesn't sound very friendly, but I do think it's a way
We'll
of
just hold it
getting
loosely.
at, hold it loosely. Yeah. With the ABCD and institutions piece, we were going to, interview people on Zoom and then transcribe and then edit and then do all this. And when I saw the process you guys had developed in allowing people to write in their own words how they would respond to these very thoughtful questions that were crafted by a team of people, I'm like, wow, that is a much richer, I think, place to cultivate the stories. And
Mm,
for the young ladies I mentioned, I think it's going to give them a chance to have conversations that are deeply meaningful to who they want their school to be, but also they as young emerging leaders to be shaped by thought leaders at this intersection of something they care deeply about. Like,
mm,
how many of us
mm.
at 16 get to talk to people who are, decades ahead of us in their community building efforts? And so
I
that's
think a lot
that's
of us still are like
exciting.
55, so 16's a head start.
It really is a lot of fun, and they're just so curious, and I love that. Keeps me happy and
Beautiful.
smiling.
All right, that's wonderful. Thank you very much, Wendy, for sharing this part of your journey. I look forward to seeing how it all unfolds. So, why don't we bring Yeti back, and we'll just spend a little bit of time seeing what's coming up, or what's alive for you now. Yeti, anything burbulating for you?
Oh yes, so much, so much.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Hit it.
Yeah, that was fabulous. I'm just I'm super touched and amazed by what you're doing with these young ladies. I think it's so great. I at the end, and one piece that I didn't speak to, which I is so powerful in community work, is empowerment. And
Mm,
I love the idea and the way that that you're empowering them to be these change agents and to come, to add to their, they're shaping their own community. They're shaping what they want to see, and that's hugely a part of again what building up is all about as well. There's the idea of giving support, and that's great, and that's needed, but it's the empowerment piece that really makes people shine and gives people a place in community. And so, yeah, while I was listening, I was just smiling because I just thought, yeah, this is the way it's done. The idea is to support people while empowering and while making them feel like they are the agent for the change and that they can
Mm,
rise to the occasion. They don't necessarily need me as a case manager to get them to their next level. They're doing it themselves, and I'm helping provide some tools along the way. And so that's super super amazing, and that, yeah, that really resonated with me about what you were sharing.
what's the
Well,
place
Yeti, when you
of oh, go ahead, Wendy. Go ahead.
I was just going to say when Yeti was speaking, so our origin story, Yeti, I was working with a group of individuals experiencing homelessness, and there was a woman there that night in the shelter. And she and I kind of hit it off and became friends. And I asked her if you could do anything with your one and only life, what would you do? And she said, I would help other people because so many people help me. And so that's how my organization got started. I said, what would okay, let's do it. What would we do? And what we began in her little tiny apartment once she got housing became the largest furniture bank on the Eastern Seaboard. And what
Well,
I watched is individuals exiting
Wow.
the shelter system. We're helping those finding housing, like everybody was paying it forward. And um, this idea that the greatest need we all have is the need to be needed. When we find
yes,
our purpose, we find our calling, we are a part of supporting others who are experiencing the same struggles we did. It's healing. There's healing in that.
100%.
So I deeply resonated with where you guys are, because we hired over 30 people a year through an AmeriCorps program, coming straight out of shelter systems. And it's hard work, my friend, but very, very rewarding.
One of the things I didn't actually speak to, but our executive director and owner of the company, or co-owner of the company, Mark Soberano, he also runs a company here called Raising the Roof, and so that is all about homelessness and yeah, just assisting in building shelter and homes and providing for a community. And so that's, yeah, that's hugely, I, I super resonate with everything that you said, and I'm so happy to meet people like you. That probably have years more service than I do under your belt, and it's so refreshing to see that you're still so passionate and just making things happen in the community. And so I'm super grateful to be here and to now know of Wendy.
Right on. Right
Feel
That's
the
on.
same.
that's a great thing about this platform as well.
Well, and that is one of our aims is to I mean, we're all miles and miles, kilometers apart,
Mhm.
and yet the work that we're doing is resonant. My thought is that this what each of you is working on, and the communities that you're alongside and in, um, this is the real world. This is the natural narrative, and simply by lifting up the stories, it seems like a simple thing that what we're doing is the real thing. And why isn't it front page news? Well, now it is.
Awesome.
Now it is. Right on. All right. So why don't we just do in a lot of our dialogue spaces, we like to close with a round of um, a gift you've received or something you're leaving our time together with. Why don't we close that way? Before we invite that, we'll just say that you can learn more about building up and embrace communities and the work that Yeti and Winder are involved in by those websites. So we've posted those. We'll post those on the YouTube space and invite you to check them out and learn more. And if you have offers in response to some of the asks that we've cultivated and named during this call, it would be super fantastic if you were to reach out or even keep your eye out for someone who might have an offer in response to an ask that's been forwarded today. So with that, we'll maybe come to a close with what we're leaving with. I feel like I dance with people who spend a lot of time in intellectual and abstract pursuits. And I am taking joy in the fact that we just spent an hour knee deep in the soil where the work is really growing. This is beautiful, beautiful for me. So thanks to each of you. Wendy, what you're leaving with?
I think what you just said about how the distance, I'm in Virginia, and I have this growing group of friends across the border to the north, and just leaving with an even deeper desire to hit the road and come see you guys, but only after your tires stop floating down to Virginia. But just this resonance that I guess I never really realized could happen, even though our context can be very different. This what Yeti just said about the empowerment stories, the stories of people taking charge of their own story, their own narrative, their own community, and how that resonates. It doesn't matter where you are. So I love meeting new people. So I will be up there to see you. Yeah, you have another friend up in Toronto. Promise to come see.
I look forward to it.
All right, thank you. And the last word goes to Yeti, a gift you've received or something you're leaving our conversation with.
I'm leaving the conversation just feeling that there are so many people out there that want to support people and that want to see a change in for the better in the world that we're living in. And it's not an easy place to live right now. There's so much going on. And so to see people out there just, supporting one another and to see the passion behind that support, it's rejuvenating, because the kind of work that I do in particular, or that we all find ourselves in, can be taxing. It can be you can kind of burn out, and so it's like every time you have the opportunity to speak to somebody or to hear these stories, it just it ignites another fire underneath you. So I'm taking that away from today, and I'm just excited that I had this opportunity and to listen and to meet everybody. So thank you for having me.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining us.
And I hope you do come down to Toronto. I will show you the ropes around here. Right.
That'd be great. I love that.
And I have to say that in the green room before the show, we were all quite envious of Yeti's background. So if anyone wants to see that the new standard has been set, watch this recording, because there it is.
That's hilarious.
All right. Yeah, no, I love it. And I understand you're a musician. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
You're right on. Okay. Yeah. All right. Another reason to come to Toronto.
Oh yeah, okay. That's great music for you if you're down to watch.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you very much to both of you. Beautiful conversation, beautiful works. Thank you for all you're doing in the world. You are raising us all up in the process of being who you are. So beautiful. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
You betcha. You're welcome. All right. With that, that's our show. You've been listening to Axiom News Live. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and of course, .com. We'll be back here at 2:00 ET next Thursday, and invite you all to join us again for what will surely be another generative conversation. Good afternoon to you.